And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go.
Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. I have good news, my friends, and I'm super excited about this. I finally get to tell you about a really terrible, well, it's not actually terrible, but a very insidious history documentary. I know. Y'all think that I'm a history nut. Well, it's true. I've been holding on to this story for a while, at least a week or so, maybe a little bit more than a week, and finally got a chance to tell you about that. Also, my friends, Agent 29 is at it again, and he's been, everywhere you look, that guy is his picture is in the media. I seem to, yesterday I accused him of being a media hound, and, maybe that's true. But we're going to talk about that. Wyoming got a failing grade, and it's good. It's an absolutely good thing, and so we're going to talk about that. Anytime the Gabby Giffords Institute gives you a failing grade, that's a good thing. It's kind of like the Wyoming Education Association when they rate legislators. If you claim to be a conservative and you get a high grade from the Wyoming Education Association, you're really not a conservative. So there's that too, and that Fremont County has finally shrugged off the American Library Association. They've done one of the things that libraries across the state of Wyoming should be doing. Well, across the country, really. The American Library Association is not that. It is an activist organization, and it has been for a really long time. And I got a new toy to play with. Now, the truth is, you're probably not going to notice that big a difference, but yeah. So I got this cool little video thing, and if you're going to do any sort of video work, you kind of need this little toy. So, yeah, super excited about it. You can't really tell the difference, but if you're wondering why the camera angles keep changing in the studio, that's why. Because I'm just kind of experimenting to see which view is the best. This one, or this one, or this one. Yeah, I don't know. Super, super fun. So I got that. But probably the most important thing that's happening today, it's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. This is the day where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. And, most of the time during the week, if I have the phone lines open, you kind of have to be on the same page as I am. Talk about what I'm talking about. Because after all, you listen to this program to hear what I think about what's going on. And so, during the week, that's kind of what we do. But not on Friday. On Friday, we keep the phone lines open the entire program, and we will visit about whatever it is that you want to talk about. So if you want to be part of the program, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the number here to reach me. And so put that on your list. Go ahead and give me a call if you want to be part of the show. Again, anything you want. If there's something that's been stuck in your craw, you just give me a holler and we'll do it. But we begin this morning in the cow pie. The University of Wyoming wants an extra $3 million from the legislature after NIL deals. So NIL is name, image, or likeness. This is the proposal that I think it came out of Congress. I'm not sure, or court ruling. But basically, if a university uses the picture or the name or the likeness, that is, a graphic or whatever, of a college athlete, then they are entitled to whatever proceeds come from that. And, in a way, it kind of makes sense to me that, hey, if you're going to use my name and if you're going to use my picture to make money, you better be paying me. But here's the problem, though. It turns college athletics into nothing more than a money-making scheme. And certainly, and I'm going back and forth on this one, I got to tell you, my friends, because to a large degree, college athletics is a money-making scheme. One of the reasons why applications at the University of Wyoming are up, and I think that Ed Seidel or Burnham or one of these guys mentions it in this piece. But one of the reasons why applications at the University of Wyoming are up is because of Josh Allen. And so the question becomes then, if a university is going to be making money off of your picture or your name, are you entitled to revenue from that? Now, I would argue that the revenue that you get from being involved in college activities, athletics or otherwise, there's a lot of activities in college that aren't necessarily athletic based. One of those is speech and debate. That's how I paid for college. But your payment for that is your scholarship. That a school comes to you and says, hey, we will give you this amount of money to go to college if you'll play basketball for us, or if you'll be on the debate team, or if you'll play football. That's the recompense that you get, is that you have your college paid for, or at least, a scholarship. So the question is, should the college write you a check? And again, my friends, this is one of those that I'm on the fence about. I don't exactly know what the case is. So we're going to talk about it for a while. And if you want to opine about this, one more time, it's the phone number is 307-374-8989. I'm sure just about everybody has some thoughts about this. I mean, if you pay attention to college athletics at all, I'm sure that you've thought about this. But here's what the cow pie says. Quote, the financial landscape of college athletics is straining the University of Wyoming's athletics budget as it tries to keep up with exploding NIL deals for Division I recruits. The school is asking the legislature for an extra $3 million a year. The, quote, Josh Allen effect has helped the University of Wyoming, but other factors, like a landmark legal settlement expanding collegiate, so it was a legal decision, collegiate athletics' capacity to make money, prompted the school Wednesday to ask state lawmakers for an extra $3 million per year to support its Division I athletics program. That's in addition to the $11.2 million the UW Intercollegiate Athletics Program receives annually in state money through the school's block grant, and a $5 million yearly payout the state hinges on the department finally finding matching money. But that doesn't tell you the whole story, and it's in the cow pie, so you shouldn't really expect that they're going to. In the biennium, this next upcoming biennium, the University of Wyoming has requested $500 million. $500 million. So that equals out to $250 million every year, because of course we do budgets, in 2-year cycles. We don't do them just in 1-year cycles. But so they get $500 million. And now the athletics program is asking for several $million more. Now, the question I have is the university's athletic program, specifically basketball and football, is, and I'm sure some of the other sports too, is kind of underwritten by the Cowboy Joe Club. Private money that's put into UW athletics. A lot of the some of the improvements at War Memorial Stadium were paid for, if not all, in part by the Cowboy Joe Club. And so they do get private money. And then you add on top of that the very large endowment that the University of Wyoming has. There is a legitimate question as to why they're asking for more money at all in any way, shape, or form. So the cow pie says The department's total expense budget is about $53 million. UW Athletics Director Tom Berman told the Legislative Joint Appropriations Committee during its Wednesday meeting in the Capitol. It's not enough money, Berman says. He referenced both economic inflation and this year's landmark $2.576 billion settlement in House v. the NCAA. Quote, if we do not get the support that we're asking for, we will have to make some very difficult decisions, Berman said. And here you go. Here is the classic line you get from government types. Just wait. You probably already know what this guy told the committee. Quote, some may define it as draconian cuts, which may include sport eliminations, scholarship eliminations, staffing reductions. We're going to have to fire all the teachers at the University of Wyoming. It's very similar to we won't be able to have any fire trucks or policemen or anything. Parks, close the parks. We're not going to put any lights on the Christmas tree. We're going to have to get rid of nurses and everybody else. It's just ridiculous. Okay, so anytime you get into budget negotiations, talks with certainly anybody from the University of Wyoming, you see these hyperbolic claims that will do away with entire programs because we don't get this couple of $1 million. Well, the question is, how many millions of dollars does the University of Wyoming have in the bank already? And how many millions of dollars are they asking for in the budget? The grand total, of course, $500 million. Those, in turn, would depress ticket sales and other marketing opportunities, said Berman, adding, quote, we are turning to all of our partners for help. In other words, according to the athletics director, we're turning over every stone we can find to raise money, and it's just not going to be enough. You, Wyoming taxpayers, are going to have to pony up the dough. Well, the question is, and this is a really good question for anybody that thinks that we should give more money to the University of Wyoming. When is the last time you walked around the University of Wyoming campus? When's the last time? For me, it hasn't even been a year, and I was absolutely shocked. Now, as we want to have a nice university, we want to have a beautiful campus. I mean, it is our state's only four-year institution, so certainly we want to have it to look, have it to be nice. But the question is, how many statues do you need on out-of-the-way walking paths? How many state-of-the-art buildings do you need? How much money do we need to spend to have the absolute best in the world? And should we even have the best in the world is another question. The truth is, the University of Wyoming is, if you go walk around the campus, it is absolutely incredible how much money they've spent on that campus. And, if the legislature is going to keep dishing out cash to the university, well, they got to spend it somehow, and they definitely have, my friends. If you are anywhere near Laramie, you should take some time and just go walk around the campus. It is absolutely mind-blowing how much money we've spent. Now, the older buildings are still there. That's certainly true. If you walk around Prixie's pasture, those are the same buildings that have been there for forever. But walk around the extremities of the campus and look at the new buildings that they've built. We talked about this during my interview with UW President Ed Seidel. And, of course, we didn't get any answer from him as to whether or not we should be spending gobs and gobs of money on statues. But we did talk about it, and I think it's very clear from when we asked Ed Seidel, hey, what do you think about spending all this money? He said, well, we're extraordinarily grateful. Well, you darn well ought to be how much money you're spending. But it is not a question of having to cancel athletic programs. It just can't be. Not with all of the support that UW Athletics gets. The House v. NCAA case paved the way for colleges and universities to pay athletes directly, in addition to offering them licensing agreements for name, image, and likeness for revenues. As part of the settlement, UW lost $550,000 per year, a far cry from $500 million that the university gets from Wyoming taxpayers every year. The UW Athletics Department now also bears the unfunded mandates of providing medical care for student athletes and scholarships 2 years post-eligibility, said Berman. The added costs are somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $350,000 annually. UW men's basketball coach Sundance Wicks compared trying to preserve the pre-settlement methods as, quote, selling CDs out of the trunk of your car instead of using Apple Music, and said his program has lost 3 or 4 recruits to other teams that made more competitive offers. So the question again is, how much money do you need? I mean, how much could possibly ever be enough for the University of Wyoming? And I think the easy answer to that is it's never enough money. That there will never be an end to the amount of cash that the University of Wyoming needs. Now, again, on the other hand, on the other side of this, we do want a great university, and we do want it to look nice, and we do want to have state-of-the-art facilities. That's true. But how much is enough? Now, Agent 29, again, and I'm not going to go too far into this because I want to save some of this for next week. I have a couple of guests that are going to be on the program that I want to talk to them about this too. But anyway, everywhere you go, Agent 29 is in the news. I think that he's feeling homesick and that he wishes he was on the program instead of, being down in Cheyenne, which I'll admit, man, Cheyenne's a nice place to visit, but I am not one of those people that would want to live there. I mean, I'm not saying anything negative if you do live in Cheyenne. I'm just saying, man, I would much rather be here at Cowboy State Politics headquarters than I would be in the middle swamp. Plus, I always get dreadfully ill every time I'm there, not to say anything about the cold that I obviously have right now. But anyway, I think that 29 would much rather be on the show. Of course he would. I mean, why not? But here's what he asked the athletics folks. Quote, from the Cowboy. Ken Pendergraft of Sheridan asked university leaders if the stardom of UW alum Josh Allen, the NFL's most valuable player in 2024, has helped their plight. Quote, we're asking here for $6 million biannually on the heels of this tremendous boost, said Pendergraft. If the university could qualify the Josh Allen effect, he said, it would be helpful to me. Now, in classic cow pie fashion, they did not include the rest of Agent 29's question. And he did send me a soundbite of it, though I did not prep it for this morning. It's one of those things that I want to save for next week when I've got a couple of guests on the show. But the rest of Ken's question was, so wait a minute, you guys spent $2 million on a Josh Allen ad during the Super Bowl. $2 million. And here you are asking for $6 million. And I would like to know what the return on our $2 million investment was for that Super Bowl ad. Now, if you could quantify that for me, that would really help. So here again is another case of the cow pie omitting things out of their article. Now, it's obvious that the cow pie reporter, let's see, who was this? I bet it was Claire McFarland. But anyway, whomever wrote this thing had to be watching it. So they absolutely heard Agent 29 ask that question, and yet they did not include it. This is what qualifies as journalism in the state of Wyoming. Well, I mean, cow pie. I mean, what do you expect? But the rest of Ken's question was, hey, man, you spent $2 million on a Super Bowl ad. And I mean, it's arguable that you could have found a better place to spend that money. But here you are asking for $6 million. So please quantify for me, what did my $2 million pay for? Berman said that despite the football team struggling recently, it's had record-breaking game attendance, record-breaking ticket sales revenue, and soaring merchandise income. UW President Ed Seidel said applications at the school are up and include a burst of applications from Buffalo, New York, home of Allen's team, the Buffalo Bills. Now, Berman's request was part of Seidel's larger presentation. UW asked the legislature for, here it is, $494 million in state money over the course of the biennium. Mark Gordon backs all but $10.3 million of that, recommending a state appropriation of $483.7 million. So it's anytime we talk about these budget requests, it's really important to listen to the backstory of all of them, because more often than not, there's a lot in there. So, for example, we're going to talk a lot about education during today's program, but I'm going to leave a lot of that discussion to next week because, like I said, I've got a couple of guests. Former Representative Mark Jennings is going to join me on Tuesday, or at least that's the plan for Tuesday. And he, having spent 10 years in the legislature, he's got a lot to say about the University of Wyoming and how much money we give them. And then on Wednesday, I've got the Sheridan County GOP chairman, James Temple's going to join me in the studio. So I've got some guests coming up next week, and I want to make sure that we leave some ammunition for them. And, I want to have some time to visit with Ken to get kind of the inside track here. And we may try to get, maybe over the weekend, get John Baer to weigh in, or some of the others on the Appropriations Committee. But the truth is, my friends, that the University of Wyoming is flush with cash, and they have been for a really long time. The question is, how much cash should we give them? And, I do think that we should have a nice university. I do think it should be well funded. But the question is, how much money should you, Wyoming taxpayers, foot the bill on? And, in my position, man, if you've got a huge endowment and we're giving you $500 million every year, which, by the way, that's pretty much on par with what they got during the last budget cycle. Why should we be giving more when they're spending $2 million on a Super Bowl ad? I mean, lots of questions, my friends, and they absolutely deserve answers. All right, so next on Open Line Friday, I've got some national news, and then, and I don't know how far down on the stack of stuff the Ken Burns piece is, but I'm super excited to talk about that. I hope I don't bore you to tears with it. Anyway, next up, from the Post-Millennial, federal judge blocks the National Guard's deployment in Los Angeles. Of course, I mean, this is the back and forth of the of lawfare. This is exactly what this is. The Democrats can't win an argument politically, or maybe that's the wrong way to put it. They can't win it in Congress. They can't pass a piece of legislation, so they enlist the help of the other branch to get judges to make nationwide rulings. And this is the back door that the Supreme Court left open with that ruling. But here's what the Post-Millennial says. A federal judge has blocked Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard to L.A. In a ruling on Wednesday, U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer determined that the deployed members of the California National Guard must return to control of Governor Gavin Newsom. About 100 troops remain in Los Angeles, and Breyer found that Trump had illegally kept them deployed months after sending them in during the summer to address riots by activists opposed to immigration enforcement. Quote, "The founders designed our government to be a system of checks and balances," Breyer said, a Clinton appointee. Quote, "Defendants, however, make clear that the only check they want is a blank one." So he's obviously, he's an Obama appointee, so there's no reason to assume that he would look at this thing, with an open mind. I mean, they just don't do that. Everything is politics now. And, it is absolutely a fact that the president of the United States is the commander in chief and can deploy National Guard troops wherever he wants. And I mean, it's like we get the president decides to do something, then we have a lawsuit. This judge says yes. This judge says no. This judge says yes. Then we get all the way to the Supreme Court. And finally, the Supreme Court says, oh, yeah, hey, guys, follow the law. He can do this. California Attorney General Rob Bonta, who filed the lawsuit against the deployment, applauded the ruling in a statement. Quote, "For more than 5 months, the Trump administration has held the California National Guard troops hostage as part of its political games. But the president is not a king. No kings, man." No, he didn't say that. That's me. And he cannot federalize the National Guard whenever, wherever, or for however long he wants without justification. This is a good day for our democracy. Okay, this guy is clearly a partisan hack. We don't live in a democracy. We don't have a king. We have a representative republic, and it just so happens that Donald Trump is the head of the executive branch, and he is fully within his powers to send troops to whichever state that he wants. The ruling is paused until Monday to give the Department of Justice time to appeal. White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson has already indicated that the Trump administration will appeal. Quote, "President Donald Trump exercised his lawful authority to deploy National Guard troops to support federal officers and assets following violent riots that local leaders like Newsom refused to stop." It actually says Newsom. Jackson said in a statement. We look forward to ultimate victory on this issue. Of course they do, because that's what's going to happen. The only reason you're seeing these rulings back and forth is partisan judges. That's the only avenue they have left. When you can't win in Congress, move the goalposts and get a federal judge to issue a ruling. I mean, it's one right after another, my friends, and we shouldn't expect anything less. Well, let's see here. Yeah, I think this next piece, I want to talk about affordability, the stupid argument about affordability. And it's going to take me longer than 4 or 5 minutes that we've got until the break. So let's go ahead and do our first break. And when we come back, we'll tackle this whole affordability thing. Back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger, my friends. This program is expanding faster than I ever thought it would. You can listen to the podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble, anywhere. You can even find it on platforms that I didn't even know existed. Also, you can listen to this program every Tuesday through Friday from 8 until 10 a.m. It's pretty rare that we don't do a show, so it's, I actually love doing the live program. There is something about doing everything live that it is unlike any other experience, I have to tell you, my friends. And I absolutely love it. And so, make sure that you don't miss a minute. Oh, and by the way, I've got a lot of responses here the last couple days from the Outrider. That's the official newsletter of Cowboy State Politics. If you don't have a copy of it in your hot little hands or in your email inbox, it's because I don't have your email address. And so if you want to sign up for the newsletter, go to cowboystatepolitics.com and fill out the pop-up form and hit submit, and it will shoot me an email, and I'll put you on the list. And you'll get a copy of my newsletter every Thursday morning, and it's it gives me a chance to interact with you in a different way. There's just some people that, for whatever reason, maybe they're just out of their mind or whatever, that they don't want to listen to a podcast. I know, they're sick. But hey, we have to get information to them too, and so it's a way for me to communicate just in another way. So sign up for the newsletter. Don't miss it. It's called The Outrider. I'm super happy with it, and I really enjoy putting it together for you. Now, we've all heard of this idiotic word, affordability. Now, the word itself isn't idiotic. It's how it's being applied. But the Democrats, they always try to come up with issues to run on that are absolutely amorphous, that they are malleable, that they're changeable, that they don't really, that they can mean anything that you want them to mean, depending on the context. Let me give you an example, and the easy one is climate change. It used to be global warming. When I was, I remember maybe it was third grade, second grade, or whatever. It was global warming. We're all going to cook, and our swimming pools will be boiling pots of boiling cauldrons, and it's going to kill everybody. And then when we realized that the Earth really wasn't warming like that, then it turned into global cooling. Yeah, the Earth was going to freeze over, and it's just going to be a giant block of ice. Just like, all these other planets that are just so cold, life can't exist. And then we realized that that wasn't going to happen either. And so then it became climate change. And the reason why they chose that phrase, climate change, is it can mean anything. I mean, it could be getting warmer, it could be getting cooler, it could be changing over decades, it could be changing over a couple of months. It just, it just matters only how you want to use it. And so depending on the context that you're in, you can use that, and it doesn't really make and it doesn't mean anything. The same holds true for this ridiculous word, affordability. It doesn't mean anything. So if your expenses go up, well, that means that your lifestyle is less affordable. If there's more inflation, well, that means your dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, so it's not affordable. If you lose your job, it's not affordable. Or if a new product comes out and you really want it, but you just don't make enough money, well, it's not affordable either. And so it works both ways. One, as a negative, and two, it's negative all the way around, but it works in two different contexts. One, you just can't pay for the things that you paid for the month or year before. And the second part is, hey, prices are too high on everything, and these greedy capitalists, they're just trying to get rich. So it is an anti-capitalist trope that doesn't mean anything. And of all places, and you might expect this one, but from the never-ending broadcast of communism network's business channel, CNBC, they had a panel that said that Biden owns the affordability crisis, full stop. And this comes to us from the Daily Wire. And I quote, host Joe Kernan and a guest, former SEC Chairman Jay Clayton, declared on Wednesday that President Joe Biden should have full and complete ownership of the so-called affordability crisis that is facing many. Oh, and the other problem with this stupid phrase, the affordability crisis, is it is imprecise. It is amorphous. Really, if you want to put, hit the nail on the head with this, it's inflation. That's the real problem. And all presidents spend money, but during the Biden administration, we spent a tremendous amount. Inflation was around, and if you looked at real inflation at some points, I think when I did the math, at 1 month, it was like 15%. And remember, inflation is cumulative. It's not, and when you hear the phrase, well, inflation is down to 2% this month. No. It doesn't mean that overall inflation has gone down. It means that it's 2% higher than it was the year prior, which means whatever the inflation rate was in a couple of previous years, you add that 2% to it. And that's why, you ever wondered why prices never go down? Well, that's why, because we continually print money over and above what we're bringing in. And inflation literally is too many dollars chasing too few of goods. And so if you really wanted to be precise about what this whole, what the Democrats are talking about, you would say it's an inflation problem. But even Republicans are buying into this stupid idea of affordability. And even on Fox News, everywhere you hear, well, it's, it's an affordability crisis. It's a crisis, I tell you. No, it's not. If you really wanted to tackle the argument instead of pushing Democrat talking points, which again, Fox News, you can include them in your analysis too. But it's inflation. It's not an affordability crisis. But anyway, back to the piece. Kernan raised the issue early Wednesday morning on Squawk Box, arguing that the economy under President Donald Trump was still struggling under some of the baggage Biden's economic policies had left behind. And I quote, "The affordability issue is from the 22% increase in prices and inflation under Biden. There's just full stop right there. That's the affordability issue, and you got to be able to explain that." Clayton agreed. That's right. And look, I think with the economic team, President Trump and Scott Bessent, you have people they very much understand this. And it was they were thrown, what I would say, the worst economy the average American in my lifetime has seen. Here's that video from CNBC, so you can hear them saying it for themselves. Let's see here. CNN, shocking. All right. Oh, wait. It would help if I was in the right folder on the right day. Here we go. CNBC.
But the affordability issue is from the 22% increase in prices and inflation under Biden. There's this full stop right there. That's the affordability issue. And he ought to be able to explain that better.
Right. That's right. And look, I think that with the economic team, President Trump and the economic team led by Scott Bessent, you have people who very much understand this. And it was they were thrown, what I would say, the worst economy for the average American in my adult lifetime, in terms of like you said, the incredible increase in prices at the household.
All right, so there you have it. That it was, really, it was Biden's team and Biden's inflation, and he did the whole shooting match. You print so much money, and it's the ARPA funds, it's the CARES money, which, again, President Trump has some culpability here too, because during his first term, he too spent like a drunken sailor. So when we talk about inflation, you have to be honest about it. It's both Republicans and Democrats have spent a tremendous amount of money. It's just the Democrats spend more. And so when we talk about the so-called affordability crisis, they rightly point out that it has to be inflation. And it's, and the best example I can give you is the gold dollar. And I've used this before on the program, but it's pretty simple. When you're talking to your friends, explain it this way. Let's say it's 100 years ago, and you've got one gold dollar in your pocket. What could you buy with it? If you had just that one gold dollar, how much would it be worth? What could you purchase? And the answer to that is two pretty nice suits, like the full three-piece kind, fully tailored. That would be great. And that's what it would cost. Now, fast forward to today, and let's say you have that same gold dollar. What could you buy? Well, two pretty nice suits. You see, it's not the value of gold that changes. It's the value of the dollar. When inflation increases, the more people invest in gold, which drives the price of an ounce of gold up. But really, when it comes down to it, it's the value of the dollar. And, if you ever played around with any of those inflation calculators, I love them. When I'm doing like a historical analysis, or I go back and say, well, in 1929, what would this have cost? And it will blow your mind how much we have devalued our dollar. And I think, during the Biden administration, I think it's fair to say that your dollar lost at least 15% of its value. And that comes right out of your savings account. It means that the amount of cash that you have, in your nest egg went down in value by 15%, which, for those people who are on a fixed income, retired, when we continually devalue our currency, you're just literally, it's a hidden tax is what it is, that it's not overt. It's the government prints money, and you can buy less with it. And so literally they're taking money. Now, how do you solve all of this? Well, this is where I disagree with the Trump administration in a big way. Almost on a weekly basis, you'll hear Donald Trump talk about the interest rate. So we got to keep interest rates low. And he says that for investment so that you can borrow money at a lower rate, you can build things, and you can expand your business. And on that point, he's correct. However, the way to lower inflation is with interest rates. And the idea is you print money on the front end, get people spending, and then on the back end, you take it out of the system with interest rates. And so, I mean, that's but when you have a lot of money printing going on and low interest rates, there's no way to get that money out of the system. And so if you look at the money supply, which is another interesting experiment, just go on to a search engine, and I think it's the M2 money supply. Just go look at it. It'll show you how much money we've printed in the last few years, and it really should scare the crap out of you. Ben Shapiro has a piece in the Daily Wire, and it's entitled, "Is Affordability a Democrat Hoax?" Now, I know a lot of you, I've seen a lot of stuff on social media, about, we don't like Ben Shapiro anymore. And frankly, I think it's ridiculous. I think he's a smart guy. I've liked him ever since he was talking to the group of protesters about girls being in Boy Scouts. And he was asked, where does it say that girls can't be Boy Scouts? And he replies, "It's in the name, Boy Scouts." But I mean, since then, I've been pretty much sold. I really think that he's a smart guy. But here's what he says on this whole affordability bullcrap. Quote, "Some red warning sirens are beginning to sound about Republican hopes in 2026, and yes, in 2028, because American politics are like a pendulum." I've told you this before on the program, that when you get too far to one direction, the pendulum is going to swing back the other direction. And that's why during the midterms, the party in power generally loses seats in Congress. It's that political pendulum back and forth. But for the first time in 30 years, Democrats have taken control of Miami. Now, Miami has been a Republican stronghold for a really long time. That's after candidate Eileen Higgins clinched the city's mayoral elections. She beat out Trump-backed Republican Emilio Gonzalez in the Florida city's runoff Tuesday night. She became the first Democratic mayor in the city since 1998. Holy crap. President Trump threw his weight behind the Republican candidate. He was joined by Ted Cruz and Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis, but it didn't matter. That pendulum was going back and forth. Some early bellwethers are not moving in Republican directions right now. And I mean, again, I think that you should expect that, because it's historically the party in power will lose seats. President Trump won an outsized share of Hispanics in the last election. The polling shows that many of them are falling off the Republican bandwagon right now, and we attribute a lot of that. The conventional wisdom is anyway that it's all of the ICE raids. But I mean, those are absolutely necessary. And I think if you watch pretty much, any interview with a legal migrant, generally speaking, they're in favor of getting illegals out of here. But the issue of the day seems to be not ICE or any of those things. It seems to be affordability. President Trump has labeled affordability a Democrat hoax because affordability is a broad buzzword that encompasses many things. This is what I was talking about earlier. President Trump, does it encompass the inflation rate? If we were talking about the inflation rate, Trump has brought it down to manageable levels. So it literally is down from Joe Biden. I mean, Mickey Mouse could lower the inflation rate from what it is under Joe Biden. It's still higher than it should be, but it's not 9 to 11 to 15%. But it's still too high. If we're talking about energy prices, yep, they're falling under President Trump. Now, I often complain about the price of gasoline in Sheridan. There's no reason why, being this close to a refinery, we're paying way more than we are in Casper. But I think yesterday I saw it at $2.76 or $2.67. I think it was $2.67. So, I mean, fuel prices are coming down. Maybe not diesel, but certainly the gasoline. When people say affordability, it's fair to say that very few people ever think that things are affordable. Everybody thinks that stuff costs too much. Nothing is affordable. And if you're struggling economically at any time in your life, it means inherently that you're going to think things aren't affordable. When people talk about affordability, what do they really mean? They mean that things are less affordable for them now than they were back in 2019. That's what the polling data shows anyway. Americans are dissatisfied with how far their money goes, which is a function of inflation. That's what Trump means when he says the affordability is a hoax. He means they created an inflationary spiral that jacked up prices, and then they handed him a bad situation. He's brought inflation down to manageable levels, and now they're shouting about affordability. They can't shout about inflation because if they say the word inflation, everyone's going to look at Joe Biden and look at Trump and realize that Trump brought the inflation rates down. And if the Democrats are honest about this whole situation, then the question becomes, what about the Inflation Reduction Act, guys? What was that all about? Because the Democrats passed legislation to intentionally increase the money supply, which drove up the prices of everything, which contributed to this whole affordability thing. So, if Democrats talk about affordability as a catch-all, that's a much more lucrative political line for them to pursue because they don't have to provide a definition for it. What we need, as always, is more deregulation, lower taxes, and better incentive structures for businesses to create new goods, products, and services. When a party wins a national election, as we did in 2024, the general tendency is to believe you have a mandate and that your party is ascending. But that's the wrong conclusion to draw. It may very well be that you won the election because the other guy was too terrible. It may not be that your party is gaining ground. And this is something that I've been talking about for a while, that it is a mistake to think that even in Wyoming, the Democrats aren't gaining in popularity, that they're not gaining in voter registration, because they are. Now, still, in Wyoming, I think the split is still 60% conservative Republican, 40% liberal Democrat, or rhino, redcoat. But they are gaining ground. And if you want evidence of that, look at all the protests. Now, again, those are just anecdotal, and I don't think that you should take them, to mean that the Democrats are going to win the next election, because they're not. But what I'm trying to draw your attention to is the swing in that direction. How were you able to get a couple of hundred people on the steps of the Sheridan County Courthouse? Sheridan's a pretty conservative place. Over around 80% of the population are registered Republicans. Okay, granted, a lot of those are not a majority, but some of those are straight up redcoats that they know that they're not going to be able to make a difference in the election if they're not registered as a Republican. But I think the point is not to discount what the left is doing. And, they've got the help of the media in Wyoming. They pretty much captured that, except for this program. They'll never capture this. But to assume that our party is on the rise simply because, hold on just a second, just because we won an election, I think that that's the wrong conclusion to draw, my friends. And let me just give you an example. There's an opinion piece in the Wyoming Turkey Vulture this morning. And the only reason I pulled this one is to highlight the, I guess what I want to say is the false narrative that a lot of Wyoming citizens are buying into. Now, this one is from, I'm not going to mention his name. It's just a letter to the editor that was published in the Turkey Vulture, but it's entitled "Cutting Property Taxes Defies Logic at a Time When Expenses Are Rising." Okay, now we don't know if the author is a Democrat or a Republican, but I just want you to listen to the logic in this. Quote, "The Freedom Caucus claims that they're replacing the property tax with an additional 2% sales tax. That's an idea that was floated out of the Revenue Committee. I don't think that that's necessarily, the opinion of all Freedom Caucus members. But anyway, he says eliminating residential property tax will result in a $644 million per year in lost revenue. That's statewide, and I don't even know that number is accurate. Increasing sales tax by additional 2% will only generate $475 per year in revenue. That doesn't come close to replacing the property tax revenue. In fact, it leaves the state $169 million short." Okay, so this is a case where statistics lie, and those who use statistics are sometimes liars. I'm not saying this guy is lying. I'm just saying that you can take any any row of numbers and make them mean anything that you want. First thing to understand is that residential property taxes don't really make up that much revenue for the counties. I think I was at a GOP meeting last night, and one of the city councilmen got up, Andy Patzig. I really like him, solid conservative. And he pointed out that if the 50% ballot initiative were to pass, it would only result in a decrease of the city's budget by 5%. There isn't a budget around that can't absorb a 10% cut, much less a 5% cut. And so even if the $644 million per year number is accurate, that's statewide. And I don't even think it is. It is accurate. But it doesn't take into account the overspending that happens in Wyoming. I mean, we spend a tremendous amount of money. In the past couple of years in Sheridan, the city's budget has doubled. And Councilman Patzig's point last night was, if your community is giving away $500,000 to so-called nonprofits, and the county is giving away another $600,000, which this happens across the state, then that's $500,000 or $600,000 that they didn't need. If they needed it, they wouldn't be giving it away. And if they're giving it away, it means you're being taxed too much. And so it exposes the budgetary bloat that is happening in every Wyoming city and in every Wyoming community. So don't buy into the narrative that, it's too unaffordable. And if we decrease taxes, we're not going to have policemen or firemen. None of that is true. You remember all the rhetoric during the session about this, Senate File 69 and reducing property taxes by 25%? You remember all that? The Cheyenne Fire Department encircled the Capitol building with fire trucks. They had firemen in the chamber. I wonder if we were paying for them while they were doing this. But anyway, through the whole debate on that bill, we're going to have to fire firemen. The police officers, the police officers union or association or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, they had people in there in uniform to make a statement. But and you heard liberal city and county officials screaming at the top of their lungs that the sky was falling, that this was going to be the end of the municipality as we know it, and none of that happened. Why? Because we spend a crap load of money, and the amount of cash that we get from residential property taxes is actually pretty low. And so, when the Democrats and the Redcoats talk about affordability, understand what they're talking about. That we always think that things are unaffordable. If I want to buy a brand new truck and it's $70,000 or $80,000 and I can't afford it, of course, I think that truck is too expensive. But the term itself doesn't mean anything, and anybody that mentions it to you, you should absolutely challenge. Hey, what does that word mean? When you say the word affordability, what exactly are you talking about? What is it about affordability? Define the word for me, and really nail them down, especially if you're talking to a politician, because they're masters at throwing around words that don't mean anything, and rarely can they ever explain them. Let's see here. Oh man, yeah, this one, and it seems like every time I get close to a break, I had to budget my time a little bit better on the program, but every single time I get close, the next story is going to take me way too long. So let's go ahead and take our second break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the failing grade that the great state of Wyoming got. It's a good thing. We got it. Things that go boom when we come back. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. Wyoming's conservative voice, that's me, David Iverson, having more fun than, anybody should be allowed to have. And I have to tell you, my friends, as sitting down here behind the microphone, it is the highlight of my day talking to you, and thank you for watching. So it's Open Line Friday. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. I'm in the studio behind the microphone, got the coffee pot going, and talking about the news. So I mentioned before the break that Wyoming got a failing grade. And generally speaking, when we say, our great state, we got a failing grade, it's terrible, 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 I tell you. But maybe it's not.
That's great!
Things that go boom from the Daily Caller. If your state didn't receive a failing grade on this left-wing test, you need to call your governor. And in this case, we got a flat F, my friends, and I couldn't be happier. Now, the truth is, we could have done much worse on this test, and we should have. But things being as they are, not too shabby. Now, there are a lot of left-wing organizations that do a lot of these ratings, ratings agencies. The left has their own ratings agencies, just like we do on the right. One of them is like the Wyoming Education Association. If you receive a failing grade from the WEA, that's a good thing. It means that you're not spending gobs and gobs of money on stupid ideas that you don't need to spend any more money on. That you realize that when we're funding the Wyoming education more than any other state, then that's enough. And so the WEA doesn't like that because, of course, they're a teachers union, and that's what they like. Well, we also have these ratings agencies for guns, and I'm proud to say that we got a big fat red F from the Daily Caller, and I quote, "The Giffords Law Center released its annual state gun law scorecard, which grades states on their gun safety policies. Where your state lands on this list is highly indicative of whether or not your state government holds dear to the foundational American principle of the right to keep and bear arms. The scorecard rewards states for piling on restrictions like mandatory safe storage requirements, gun control at all, so-called assault weapons ban. There's no such thing as an assault weapon, by the way. Universal background checks, which we already have, that treat every law-abiding gun owner as a criminal in waiting. The so-called experts at the Giffords Law Center analyze every state's gun laws and compare them to the latest CDC gun death data. in order to prove their hypothesis that states with stronger gun laws have lower gun deaths, which is not true at all. All you got to do is look at the UK, and this is a fascinating discussion, but when they started banning guns, crime rates with other objects went up because guns don't kill people, people do. And so if you don't have access to a gun and you're intent on whacking somebody, you're going to use a baseball bat or a knife or a truck or, whatever else, golf club. I mean, that'll work too. Doesn't necessarily have to be the gun. And so when you outlaw guns, well, just crime with other stuff goes up. Unsurprisingly, California ranked at the top with an A score due to its labyrinth of regulations that has turned a once-free state into a nanny state nightmare. Low-scoring states like, listen to this, Wyoming or Mississippi, by contrast, refuse to genuflect to gun control lobbies, and therefore were given an F. I mean, on this one, my friends, it is awesome that our great state was mentioned first, as it should be. One of the reasons why we have a low crime rate in Wyoming is, the possibility that you might get shot is pretty high. I would venture to say that at least 1 in 4 people that you meet on the street is packing a weapon. That seems to be a pretty solid number to me. Wyoming, or guns in the state outnumber the population 10-1, if not more. And the truth is, those numbers don't even account for guns that have been, left to people in wills or all those sorts of things. Now, I personally don't have any weapons. They were lost in a tragic boating accident. I mean, a really dumb idea having all of my guns in the boat at one time. But anyway, I did, and now, I don't have any more, allegedly. Now, it doesn't take an expert to see that there's a disconnect with the scorecard's methodology of assigning points for gun control laws that supposedly reduce gun violence, but don't really do that. It ignores the reality that criminals don't follow the law. That's kind of why we call them criminals. By definition, they don't follow the law. So anyway, here is our scorecard, and I thought, why not check it out, and we can celebrate that we actually have, let's see here, that we received such a terrible grade from this outfit. Here we go. Check this out, my friends. Here you go. Grading the states. And in Wyoming, and here's why it says that we got such a low grade. Let's see here. Gun law strength ranked. We are last, 50 out of 50. Gun death rate. Well, on this one, we are 5 out of 50 because, we don't have that many people here. Gun deaths per 100,000. And this is the misleading statistic here, right here. 23.6 gun deaths, which, again, that phrase in and of itself is absolutely misleading because they're not deaths related. They're not guns that are killing people. It's people killing people. Difference between the national average. We're up 81%. And what changed? Well, it's easier to conceal a weapon on school grounds or anywhere else. All I have to say with that, my friends, is that's great. Yeah, absolutely, my friends. So anyway, good job, Wyoming, on scoring an F with the Giffords Institute. What a ridiculous organization. It's just like that stupid every day for every town for gun safety or whatever the heck they call themselves. It's just absolutely. By the way, I'm really enjoying this new toy that I have. Excuse me. All right, so let's see. I've got a couple of stories that I want to. You know what? Let's talk about the Ken Burns thing. I've been waiting to talk about this, and it is it's been and again, you're just going to have to indulge me. Hopefully, I don't lose all my listeners. I've got a pretty high number today. Oh, and by the way, it is again, it's Open Line Friday. So if you want to opine about anything we're talking about, go ahead and give me a call. 307-374-8989. From the Washington Times on December 4th. Ken Burns had to correct a, quote, woke bomb in his new documentary series about the Revolutionary War. Critics of the 6-part The Revolution accused the legendary filmmaker of injecting left-wing inspired inaccuracies into the series. Among them, a claim that American Indians inspired the Founding Fathers to form the United States and that a woman injured in battle received only half the compensation awarded to a male soldier. Those affiliated with the series have rejected some of the complaints, but they've made a significant correction. Okay, so who is Ken Burns? Ken Burns is the filmmaker that did, and you've seen this, the Civil War. You remember that 10-part series that they showed you in school? It's actually a great series. Ken Burns is a legendary filmmaker. The Civil War was a great series. Most of the work that he does is factually correct. But the problem is this last one, well, it's not exactly as factually, not what I want to say, consistent. There we go. As the Civil War was. There's a piece in the American Thinker, which if you've never looked at that website, you should probably check it out. There's lots of good stuff on there. Ken Burns rejects factual revolutionary history in favor of the 1619 Project. This is by David Sulzer. And I quote, Ken Burns is giving a history of the American Revolution replete with leftist narratives unmoored from facts. In episode 1, Burns erroneously claims that the driving force of the American Revolution was to steal Indian land. Yeah. That is the very first thing that comes up in Ken Burns' documentary. Let me just play it for you. This is from the like I say, the very first thing that you'll hear in this thing. Let's see here. Where is it? I got to get the right one. Here we go.
From a small spark kindled in America, a flame has arisen, not to be extinguished. Without consuming, it winds its progress from nation to nation and conquers by a silent operation. Man finds himself changed and discovers that the strength and powers of despotism consist wholly in the fear of resisting it, and that in order to be free, it is sufficient that he wills it. Thomas Paine.
Okay, so stop right there just for a second. Now, it's appropriate that he starts out the documentary with Thomas Paine. I mean, if you're going to do a documentary about the American Revolution, you got to start it out with one of the founding fathers at least. And this is where the deception of the whole documentary starts, because it leads you to believe that everything that follows is also historically consistent, but it's not. Listen to this next quotation, or whatever it actually is. Check this out.
We know our lands are now become more valuable. The white people think we do not know their value, but we are sensible that the land is everlasting. Kanasatego, spokesman for the Six Nations.
Whoa. So Ken Burns, I mean, the second quotation in this thing, and again, this is the very beginning of the movie, and it sets the tone for everything that's going to follow. Anybody that knows anything about communication will tell you that the first impression that you make on somebody is the majority of what they're going to remember about you. And the amount of time that you have to make a first impression is around 30 seconds. I mean, and I don't know if you know how fast that goes, but it's pretty quick. So what somebody else sees about you in that first 30 seconds is going to chart the course of what they remember about you all the way through. And so for the second quotation of this entire movie, and it is a biggie, Ken Burns does not produce small movies. I mean, they are all marathons, which is why, everybody considers him to be the foremost expert on documentary history, documentary filmmaking. And so when he comes out with something, it's a big deal. But the impetus behind the American Revolution was not to steal Native American lands. And here's another thing, too. And, okay, so all right, let me just play the second one here, and then we'll go then we'll talk about it. So listen to this. Here's the claim that is absolutely bullcrap from the very beginning.
Long before 13 British colonies made themselves into the United States, the 6 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy, Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Tuscarora, Oneida, and Mohawk, had created a union of their own that they called the Haudenosaunee, a democracy that had flourished for centuries.
No!
We heartily recommend union. We are a powerful confederacy, and by your observing the same methods our wise forefathers have taken, you will acquire fresh strength and power. Therefore, whatever befalls you, never fall out one with another.
Okay, watch this next part.
In the spring of 1754, the celebrated scientist and writer Benjamin Franklin proposed that the British colonies form a similar union. He printed a cartoon of a snake cut into...
Okay, all right. Oh, stop. Okay, so there's a number of problems with this. And if I can use a picture, here we go. Okay, so first, the language of the Native Americans was not written down, and so there's really no documentary history that you could use to go back and verify that. Secondly, they didn't have any sort of quote unquote democracy, as Ken Burns claims. What they had was a peace treaty. That's it. There was nothing more there. It was a peace treaty. Hey, we're just not going to attack each other. And, if you're attacked, hey, we'll help out. That's what it was. It wasn't a representative republic. It was not a democracy. They didn't even vote to have their members that were in leadership. I mean, it was done so by their lineage. There wasn't a democracy there. But Ken Burns leads you to believe that there was. Now, I really enjoy Matt Walsh, and he painstakingly went through a large portion of Ken Burns' documentary. And I just want to, it's kind of long, but I just want to play you what he had to say about it. And he's spot on with this. I mean, it absolutely it rings true. So let me just play for you what Matt Walsh had to say about this. Many of the things that I just told you, they're in there. So check this out.
So you heard that correctly. The 6 Indian tribes of the Iroquois Confederacy, according to the narrator, were a thriving democracy. And the founding fathers would go on to create a similar union. So the implication is that Ben Franklin saw what the Iroquois had achieved, and like a typical white colonialist demon, he cribbed their work for the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Our system of government is based on the appropriation of marginalized people. That's the idea. We owe our democracy to the Indians, basically. So this is the opening argument of this documentary. Now, never mind the fact that the Iroquois didn't even have a written language. Never mind the fact that they didn't hold any kind of election at all to choose their leaders. Never mind the fact that clan mothers, the Indian elders who actually selected the leaders, obtained their power because of hereditary right, meaning their bloodline. Never mind the fact that there wasn't anything like a Western democracy in any Indian tribe anywhere in the hemisphere. Despite all this, we're supposed to conclude that because a bunch of tribes were able to band together and form a primitive confederacy, Ben Franklin was sitting there taking notes and ultimately created a similar union based on theirs. Now, notably, Burns does not tell you what he's basing this claim on, which will become a running theme as we go through here, because the claim is obviously ridiculous. So I'll tell you. I'll give you the one piece of evidence, the only piece of evidence that he's relying on to make this absurd and remarkable argument. I mean, if this was true, that our democracy was based on Indian tribes, well, that's big news. So, extraordinary claim, extraordinary evidence, as we're told. So what's the extraordinary evidence to support this claim? Well, it's this letter, which was sent by Ben Franklin to a man named James Parker in 1751, more than 24 years before the American Revolution. And here's what the letter says. Quote, "It would be a very strange thing if 6 nations of ignorant savages should be capable of forming a scheme for such a union and be able to execute it in such a manner as that it has subsisted ages and appears indissoluble, and yet that a like union should be impracticable for 10 or a dozen English colonies, to whom it is more necessary and must be more advantageous, and who cannot be supposed to want an equal understanding of their interests. Okay, so Franklin is not talking about war with Britain or establishing an independent nation or anything like that. Remember, this is decades before the American Revolution. And Franklin certainly isn't praising any thriving democracy in the Iroquois Confederacy, because there is not one. Instead, he's talking about a straightforward plan to unite the colonies so that they function more like a political unit rather than 13 completely separate entities. And he's saying, if these savages can form a confederacy to function as a unit, then obviously we can too. So it's a bit like coming across a pack of dogs on the street and seeing how they're all very quiet and, well behaved, and then you turn to your children and say, well, if those dogs can behave, then you can too. And when you say that, you're not telling your children that the dogs invented the concept of good behavior or made you realize what good behavior looks like. You're not modeling your parenting off of the dogs. You're not saying that you're...
I think you get the point. That a large portion of Ken Burns' documentary is factually correct. That he does a pretty good job, just like he did in the Civil War documentary, by giving you, troop movements and historical documents and, firsthand sources. I mean, all of those things are true. But there is that 15 to 20% of the documentary that is not true, that you begin with an absolutely fabricated piece right at the very beginning of the show, which is going to color the rest of it. Again, it's that first impression thing that I was talking about, that if you tell people a falsehood from the very beginning, that is what they are led to believe through the entire thing, that we white people are just a bunch of colonialists, that we're taking over all of the Native American lands, which, by the way, I would argue that the term Native American is kind of insulting. But anyway, that we are really just colonialists. And the truth could not be any farther from that. They did not have a democracy. There was not a representative republic. It was a peace treaty, if only a loose one like that. So, it's really a sad thing when somebody like Ken Burns, who, again, we've all seen his documentary, The Civil War. I think it's a really sad thing that he has stooped to this level to give you a bunch of crap that it's not really true at all. So anyway, my friends, it's worth going and checking out just so you can see what he was trying to pull over on you. But it's classic 1619 type of thinking. And here's why I say that. The 1619 Project claimed that America was a slave country. It's a stupid thing put out by the New York Times. And it is full of a whole bunch of historical inaccuracies, of one of which being, that a lot of the slave trade was perpetrated by people who are black. So, yeah, there's a lot of it that is just absolutely 100% not true. So it's, I've been wanting to tell you about that story. Anything that, comes along that's got a little history nugget, especially related to the American Revolution. I've got to tell you about this, but this is not, this is a method the left has used for a really long time. Another great example is the stupid book, A People's History of the United States, written by Howard Zinn. You'll find that book in just about every history classroom in America. I say just about, because there's some smart teachers out there that realize that it is a load of crap. The entire book distills the United States down to this Marxist ideology of a class struggle. And it's quoted as fact by a lot of history professors, but the truth is that Howard Zinn wasn't a historian. He was a political scientist, and he was a socialist. The entire book is filled with a whole bunch of historical distortions. And, one of the reasons why I think this is so important is you have to understand where we came from in order to counter a lot of the arguments that the left is making right now, because it absolutely is their strategy to undermine the foundations. And if you can do that, you can undermine the whole house. It's the same claim that, this country wasn't founded as a Christian nation. That is a load of crap. Our founders were deists. No, they weren't. Even the least religious among them, Benjamin Franklin, said that, hey, we probably need to pray at the Constitutional Convention. So, if you can undermine the foundation of people's beliefs, well, you can get them to believe in anything. Well, fast forward, let me give you one that you're all familiar with. This whole idea of that people can be trans, that a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man. So there's a fundamental truth that all of us know from the time when we're born, right? We know that we have a mommy and a daddy, that it takes a mommy and a daddy to make a little kid. But if you can undermine the idea of gender, that is, from the very beginning, well, then you can get people to believe anything that you want. And so Ken Burns, if he can undermine the ideas about the founding of our country, well, then he can convince you of a whole bunch of different stuff. I mean, this is the most insidious type of propaganda that exists, that you sprinkle, historical fact with fiction. And I mean, it is the strategy that the left has used from the very beginning. Did God really say that? 500 independent fact checkers have said that you're wrong. But I mean, that's the strategy that the left uses. Now, a guy that I have had on the program before, that I've actually spent a lot of time with, is James O'Keefe. Now, he's got a new piece out, and this is great. From The Blaze. Georgetown professor starts running after realizing that he's actually talking to James O'Keefe and his racial slurs are on camera. Now, he's a professor, an adjunct professor, but he's at Georgetown University. When James reveals his identity, the former NPR reporter is momentarily frozen in disbelief. And I quote, Jonathan Franklin, a former race and identity correspondent for NPR, who now apparently serves as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University, recently went into panic mode after he realized that he had made a series of damning remarks to investigative journalist James O'Keefe on a hidden camera. In the footage, published on Wednesday by the O'Keefe Media Group, Franklin, whose personal website is now password protected, his Instagram profile has been set to private, and his page on the GW website has been largely scrubbed, appears to call various black conservatives coons, including Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, Candace Owens, and U.S. Ambassador to the Bahamas, Herschel Walker. Well, the first thing is that I'm actually James O'Keefe. When pressed by O'Keefe on why he hasn't shared such views publicly, Franklin, who is set to teach a journalism course on sourcing and interviews, appears to say, I'd have to stop being a journalist for me to say what I really want to say. All right, so I went ahead and pulled the video from this. It's kind of long, but it's well worth listening to. Important points here. First, this guy claims to be a journalist. He worked for NPR. The very outfit that the Trump administration, they got defunded in the big, beautiful bill, the very people that are asking the Wyoming legislature to give them $10 million. Of course, the Wyoming version of NPR. They're asking for $10 million of our money, and this is one of their journalists. And he's allegedly teaching a class at GW. So check this out. I mean, I think this is a tremendous video. I'm a big fan of James O'Keefe. I have been, ever since I got to meet him here in Sheridan, and I had him on the program and got to spend some time with him over in Cody. But check this out. I think this is great.
And because I went with a bunch of stupid white people.
Lawrence is his name?
Yeah, Lawrence. Yeah.
Lawrence, what do you think of him?
I mean, he's just a sellout. He's like a coon.
Clarence Thomas?
The biggest coon of them all.
What do you think of Candace Owens?
Another coon.
Have you ever heard of a guy named, his name is James O'Keefe. Well, the thing is that I actually am James O'Keefe.
Are you?
Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not James O'Keefe.
Are you not?
I am.
Really?
Yes. And you don't know that
he's a runner.
You called black people, quote, coons.
He's attacking the camera. That's a misdemeanor. You can't.
Jonathan Franklin, the man you see across on an undercover date with me, is currently an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. Franklin is scheduled to teach a class on sourcing and interviews technology in the spring. More on that later. Franklin is also a former correspondent from National Public Radio that wrote about issues concerning race, culture, identity, and justice. Now, in our meeting, Jonathan claimed he was a national correspondent for CBS, a detail that I believed at the time. I later discovered that this was false and that he was lying to me. Lawrence is his name?
Yeah, Lawrence, yeah.
Lawrence, what do you think of him?
I mean, he's just a sellout. He's like a coon. Herschel Walker,
Clarence Thomas?
The biggest coon of them all.
What do you think of Candace Owens? Her situation.
Annoying.
She's crazy.
She's crazy.
So, is she another, like, what you said?
Another coon.
Yeah.
Yep.
She is.
She is.
It's her deal.
Rosa.
She sells out to, like, white people?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Selling your soul to the Uncle Sam, the white man, and it's just assuming that aligning your views with him or with that point of view is going to get you ahead, but it's actually going to set you back. Because I work with a bunch of stupid white people.
Stupid white people?
Yeah. Like, a spade is a spade. So, like,
I am ashamed, to be honest with you. I will, like,
no, you're fine.
I'm so ashamed of my race. So Candace is a coon, too.
Yeah. Or a sellout. Sellout's like we could just go with sellout.
What's the difference between the two?
I mean, it's just basically interchangeable, but sellout is more of like politically correct.
Jonathan Franklin's body of work while at NPR was focused on black culture, race, and justice, and here he is throwing around racial slurs. During the date, I encouraged Jonathan to speak his mind and tell the public what he really thinks with the career that he's had. You should say this publicly. I mean, like, it would be interesting, refreshing.
A lot of people would not like to hear my thoughts.
No?
This is the important point here.
I mean, you know what? Yes, I was thinking that. But
you are a journalist, you know?
I'd have to stop being a journalist for me to say what I really want to say.
That's crazy, though.
All right, so there's the point, right? That he is a national correspondent for, he's a correspondent for NPR. He doesn't actually, later on in the video, he reveals that he doesn't actually work for CBS. But this is a guy that not only is he an adjunct professor at George Washington University, he is also a journalist with NPR. And, you know, whenever agencies come before, and agency is a loose term, but they come before the legislature and they say, you need to give us money. NPR, for example, or Wyoming Public Broadcasting, or whatever the kids call them these days. They need to be held accountable for the stuff that they put out. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that this guy, Jonathan Franklin, had been on the airwaves in Wyoming, but he works for NPR. And earlier this week, I showed you like straight up racist content that is from a program that Wyoming PBS or public radio absolutely broadcasts, all things considered, you know, with the pipe. But we need to hold them accountable for the content that is on their airwaves. And if they're going to be, receiving public money, taxpayer dollars, they need to be held accountable. And if you're going to put out crap like this guy was producing, that, you know, it's he can't really say what he thinks because, you know, he wouldn't be a journalist. And so he just colors everything so that he leads you to believe that, you know, conservatives are racist or whatever. And I mean, you can look into this guy's body of work, and that's what you'll find, that he is a straight up racist and, a so-called journalist. But that's what we get from Wyoming Public Broadcasting and NPR. You know, as I think it was Tuesday that I brought you those sound bites that, it's the evil white man and we're all a bunch of racists. And so, you know, I applaud the Appropriations Committee. They've done fantastic work this week asking these agencies to justify why they need taxpayer dollars. And, you know, the pieces from NPR, from Wyoming Public Broadcasting, from the University of Wyoming, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about next week that it just shows you exactly where we're at and what your money is going to. And that's the biggest part of it right there. We spend a tremendous amount of money. We give money to so-called nonprofits that really are not working in your best interests, well, at all, really. And so we just need to, and if you believe the media narrative that said, well, there's nowhere that we could cut anything, we have to spend, $11 billion. That is a load of crap. In the appropriations meeting, it was the head of Wyoming Public Broadcasting or Public Radio, whichever one of them she works for. She flat said, that the federal government cut all of our funding, so we need you state legislators to backfill that. It's absolutely wrong, and we shouldn't give them one more dime. And I agree. I mean, Agent 29 pegged this one right on the nose, that if you produced a product that people actually wanted, then they would pay for it. If it was of value to them, they would pay for it. But evidently, you're not, and so they're not. And that's the way we should approach things. And yesterday, in the appropriations meeting, it was Superintendent of Public Instruction, Megan Degenfelder, who said she's trying to run her agency more like a business. Really? How much money do we spend through her agency? But that's the attitude that we ought to have. There's no reason why we can't run our state government the way that you run your household. So anyway, my friends, there you have it with our friend of the program. I would say it's been a super long time since he's been on the show, but James O'Keefe chasing down a GW professor who allegedly works for NPR. Well, we're going to go ahead and take our next break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the program. Well, that is the wrong soundbite. I don't even know what that one was. Here we go. Back in a minute.
Horse crap.
Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Open Line Friday on the program. Hope you had a fantastic week and you're gearing up for the weekend. It is a snowy place here at Cowboy State Politics headquarters. I've been wondering when the snow was going to hit us, and apparently that decision was made for last night, which is kind of creating a problem for me. Some of my Christmas gifts are stuck in Billings. So hopefully they get the road to where my stuff can get to me, because there's yet another toy for the studio I'm waiting on and some Christmas gifts. And so hopefully the freight happens. I'm sure you're having the same problem. But here's a maybe a suggestion. If you've got some stuff that's going to be stuck out in the nether regions in the snow and you can't make it to you, or, it's just holiday traffic, well, maybe you ought to go down to your downtown and spend some money in your own community. There's a couple of outfits that I've already purchased some Christmas gifts at. So so go spend some money with the people that employ most of us, small businesses. And that's absolutely the truth, my friends. It is small businesses that employ the majority of workers in America, and it's certainly the case here in Wyoming. Not every town has a Walmart, and so where do people go to work? Well, you got two choices. You can work for a small business, a construction outfit, or a shop down on Main Street, or you can work for the government. But those are your choices here. So go support those folks. And anyway, so from the Daily Caller. A teacher accidentally seems to make the best case for why public schools are failing students. Now, I talked about this a little bit on the broadcast yesterday, that one of the reasons why our public schools are failing is we've got the wrong goal. The goal is, the one that we're focused on right now, is we got to graduate a whole bunch of students. Graduation rates are the most important, and that's what we have to focus on. Instead of how our students perform when they get out, when they're on their way out of school. How smart are they? What do they know? And we do that through standardized tests. Now, the truth is that I hated those things, but still I knew that, hey, you got to take these tests. This is going to determine what colleges you can get into. And so you got to work hard at them. The grading system is another thing. So, we're not really focusing on education the way that we should. But here's what the Daily Caller says. Quote, a Washington state school teacher inadvertently handed conservatives the single clearest example imaginable of why public education is failing, according to recently reported allegations. Quote, and listen to this. I hope that we don't have any of these people in Wyoming, but I'm not certain about that. A non-binary school teacher in Tumwater, Washington, named Mix T.J. Thornton, allegedly pushed back against teaching a 10-year-old boy for the 5th grade school year because his father, a school board member, Casey Taylor, had voted months earlier to keep girls' sports biologically female, according to Alicia Perkins' Substack. Thornton goes by they-them pronouns, but if I were a betting person, I would assume that she is a progressive white female because this is the only way this story makes any sense. Despite Taylor's views on protecting girls' sports being a common-sense position supported by roughly 70 to 80% of Americans, and it's extraordinarily popular in Wyoming as well, in every poll, Thornton claimed there were safety concerns over the family's supposed views on transgender issues and allegedly went to the school's administration with those concerns, according to the investigators' September 24th report cited by Perkins. While the investigator reportedly concluded that the allegations against Thornton were unsubstantiated, Taylor filed a complaint with HR and the superintendent on November 30th, according to Perkins. The taxpayer-funded teacher decided that the 4th grader's presence resulted in an unsafe environment because the teacher put politics above her actual job, and that is educating students. That apparently it's this 5th grader's fault that her father has his head screwed on straight. That somehow that's a threat to her because, and this goes to the main problem with liberals, that the truth is an enemy to their agenda. Because, much of their agenda isn't based in fact, isn't based in truth. It's based on some stupid idea that comes out of a university. And when you present them with the facts, it challenges that narrative, and it proves to be absolutely untrue. That men cannot become women any more than they can become a trout. And so the threat of this 5th grader's father was that the teacher might actually be confronted with facts. But the reason why our schools are failing nationwide is that we are focused on, we have the wrong goal in mind. The goal seems to be politics, and that's absolutely true with the Wyoming Education Association. And the Wyoming media is in it up to their ears and eyeballs with them. It is the cowpie that refers to the teachers union, the Wyoming Education Association, as the school advocacy organization. They're a teachers union. They collect dues. Let's put all our cards on the table and tell people, what the truth is. But therein lies the problem, is that the facts don't line up with the agenda of those folks who are in education. Yesterday, I mentioned a couple of state representatives that are involved in education that are profoundly off their rocker. And these are the folks that are allegedly, more educated than you or I. The problem, though, is that they spend so much time in universities that they tend to believe the egg-headed theories that come out of the peer review cycle. Like this teacher in Washington, that her agenda trumps educating students. And the best evidence that I have that this is happening in Wyoming is on the Wyoming Education Association's own website. Their Safe and Just Schools cadre. And what that is a teacher so-called training program to where they teach kids about social justice, or they teach teachers about social justice. And then the last line of one of those modules is so that we can activate change. What does that mean? It means turning teachers into activists to push a liberal agenda. And, I know nobody really wants to think that their hometown school suffers from this problem, but they do. I've sat down with some teachers from Sheridan. We were talking about the ban on gun-free zones, and they are fundamentally towing the party line. That much of what they believe and much of what they tell their students isn't true. And so, if you have teachers that are spreading bullcrap to their students, what do you suppose their students are going to believe? A friend of mine, a good friend of the program, he often says, man, if you send your kids to Caesar, you shouldn't be surprised when they come back home and they're Romans. And that is exactly the point here, is that you have a lot of teachers like this gal in Washington. I think it's a gal, who knows, who absolutely pushes the liberal agenda. Now, one of those that's I think is way more insidious than others is the American Library Association. They are not a library association. They're an activist organization that uses books to push an agenda. And most schools, now let's be honest, your school librarian is way too busy to read every single book. Teachers, administrators, they're way too busy to sit down and read every single book. So what happens is they take the recommendations from the American Library Association because ostensibly that group is nonpartisan. They're just interested in educating kids. They wouldn't push a political agenda. And what you find is a number of books that are, really objectionable. This is where a lot of this pornography in schools business is coming from. That, hold on, we'll hit the sneeze button for a minute. There. Should be happy that I actually got that one. Getting a little frog in my throat. Though, I am pumped full of drugs, so we're actually doing halfway decent today. From the Turkey Vulture, what happened? The Wyoming Tribune Eagle. What's behind Fremont County's American Library Association fight? Now, in Fremont County, they've decided to do away with the American Library Association, or that at least that is one of the goals. When the Fremont County Library Board voted 3-2 last week to scrub its governing policies and materials of references to the American Library Association, it was a culmination of months of heated debate that touched on everything from book banning to pornography to Marxist influences. The ALA, as it's commonly known, is a 150-year-old membership organization offering resources and professional development to librarians. Not long ago, the group was relatively uncontroversial, but in recent years, it's become embattled in America's culture wars, launching initiatives on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and fending off accusations of radical wokeness from conservative activists. Okay, so you can tell who's writing the piece, but the truth is that they are an activist organization. I've documented a number of books on this program that are absolutely on the list of recommended books from the American Library Association. And here's one that most people don't know. At one time, one of the higher-ups at the American Library Association had a Wyoming connection. She was the dean of libraries at the University of Wyoming. Who would have guessed that? And so, I think that that's a pretty unknown fact, but it always fascinates me when you hear a lot of this liberal activism and you trace back the source of them, and you find out that, shockingly, they were at the University of Wyoming for one time or another, which is how this ended up in the crosshairs of the library board in Fremont County. The ALA advocates for measures that impede parental involvement while pushing initiatives such as unisex bathroom policies that are not in line with Fremont County board member Marta Mossberg, as she said in September, when she introduced the motion to remove the references. None of the libraries in the system are ALA members, though many librarians are. So it is the people that run the organization that you have to worry about. And, here's my view of this whole thing. I think that libraries ought to be, repositories of knowledge. And that often means that some of the stuff that's in there you're going to find objectionable. The problem I have is when you put those objectionable materials, the things that you and I would probably say, yeah, I don't really agree with that. When you put it within reach of young children, and a lot of these books were in the children's section of the library. One example, and there are many, one of them was called The ABCs of Equality. Now, that smacks of a book that we ought to have in Wyoming, wouldn't you say? We're the equality state. Why wouldn't we have a book that says the ABCs of equality? Which is probably why that book was put on the shelf in the beginning. But when you open it up, you have things like B is for bisexual, G is for gay, S is for sex. And that's pretty much how the entire children's book goes. There's the book Gender Queer, which is basically a graphic novel that has graphic portrayals of gay sex in it. So there are absolutely volumes from the American Library Association that were recommended for them that have ended up on Wyoming's library shelves, and in some cases, school libraries. The one of the worst examples, I think, was a book called Lawn Boy. I've told you about this one on the program hundreds of times, but I found it in the Encampment Elementary School Library, the elementary school, and it is a graphic portrayal of the most horrible things that could happen to young boys, and it was in the elementary school library. So those books being on the ALA list, get recommended. And again, because, people are busy and it takes a lot to run a school, you just say, well, let's order the top 10 books off of ALA's website, and boom, they end up in the library, and nobody's the wiser. So anyway, Fremont County has decided to do away with them, rightfully so. The proposal, which spurred hours of debate and more than 250 public comments, highlighted deep divisions in the community over censorship and what materials belong on a public library shelf. The majority of comments, around 70%, opposed the measure, according to Fremont County Library Director Anita Marple's tally. Marple was also against it. Quote, "The whole process for me has been really discouraging," she told the board. "The measure feels like an unnecessary cudgel," adding that the library system could just decide on a case-by-case basis. But herein lies the problem. Libraries are not doing that. They are not deciding on a case-by-case basis. Books end up getting ordered en masse, and they get put on library shelves because ostensibly the ALA is a good organization. So the vote represents the latest in a string of fraught decisions and board discord in Fremont County, which operates libraries in Lander, DuBois, and Riverton. In the wake of the 3-2 vote, Marple will begin the formal process of amending the library system's policies accordingly. And then the piece goes into, it's a long article talking about this ALA, but practically the change resulting from the decision involves the removal of 3 ALA-affiliated documents from the Fremont County Library System's policies. One, freedom to read document states that, among other things, it is in the public interest for publishers and librarians to make available the widest diversity of views and expressions. The second is the Library Bill of Rights. The last one is the ALA Ethics Statement for public library trustees, which the board members, right? And let's see here. Long term, however, Riley says that she's worried that this is going to be used as a stepping stone to further restrict free access of information in the library. Library County Board member Kristen McClelland, who voted for the ALA language removal, said last week she doesn't think the change will make users feel unwelcome. Well, the truth is, we need not involve organizations that are detached from what we're actually doing in Wyoming in our decision-making processes. What happens in New York may not represent what happens in Wyoming, and most of the time that it doesn't. So why then would we base decisions on what groups are doing in other parts of the country? We wouldn't. We got to make decisions based on fact and our own, what's best for our own communities. We shouldn't just say, well, because it's the American Library Association, we should just put those books on the shelves. That's ridiculous, my friends. We always hear the Wyoming left, the redcoats scream, we need Wyoming solutions for Wyoming problems. I couldn't agree more. So let's do that. Let's stop paying attention to groups like the American Library Association. Well, my friends, I've pretty much burned up another busy broadcast day on the program. I'm going to sign off for this afternoon. This morning anyway. I've got a meeting I've got to get to. But it's been a fun week. And next week is shaping up to be another blockbuster. I've got, like I said, I've got a couple of guests coming in next week. And there's a lot more to talk about with the Appropriations Committee. No doubt it'll be Agent 29 all over again. I'll get the inside scoop from him this weekend, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday. Make sure that you don't miss the podcast that will be released tomorrow. I haven't actually sat down and decided what it's going to be yet. I'll do that later on today. Also, if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, make sure that you do that. It's the Outrider, and you can sign up for it at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. All you got to do is put your email address in there and hit send, and I will put you on the list. But for now, my friends, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good weekend, my friends. See you next week.